Let's dive right into the origins and start from the very beginning. In the year 570 AD, baby Muhammad came into the world. Muhammad was born in the desert in a place called Mecca, south of the Byzantine and Sassanid Empire, and just south of Medina. In this region, one's tribe was very closely related to one's identity. They were who protected you. At the same time, each tribe worshipped individual goddesses and gods. They were often associated with trees, water sources, and rocks. Muhammad had an ordinary birth, unlike the miraculous conception of baby Jesus. His childhood was filled with tragedy. His father died months before he was born, and his mother passed away when he was only 6. Eventually, coming under the care of his uncle, he became a merchant, and by the age of 20 was a well-trusted and well-respected merchant. So well-trusted that he was asked to mediate when a central shrine in Mecca was damaged in a flood. Leaders argued over who should put back the last stone. He came up with a solution to use a cloth to share the weight of the stone and share the honor amongst them. After hearing of Muhammad, a 40-year-old merchant proposed to Muhammad. They had 6 children. Once Muhammad got into his 40s, he made regular retreats to the mountains to meditate. Muhammad fell asleep one time and woke up with his body shaking and heard a voice telling him to read, and he said he cannot read, and the voice spoke what would later become the first verse of the Quran. Proclaim in the name of thine Lord, and cherish created man out of mere clots of congealed blood. Proclaim thy Lord is most bountiful. He who taught the use of the pen taught man what he know not. Muhammad came home and tells his wife. His wife convinces him that he heard the voice of the Abrahamic God, and he is the next prophet. According to the Muslim faith, this is how Muhammad transitioned from Muhammad the merchant to Muhammad the prophet. According to the Islamic faith, he spent the next 3 years in deep meditation and prayer. He heard nothing for 3 years, until he had a second revelation, where God told him to spread the message of God. It is said that God told him word for word what to write in the Quran, and the Quran is the word of God written through Muhammad instead of by Muhammad. In fact, it would be offensive to tell a Muslim that Muhammad is the author. Muhammad's first religious gathering was with his family and a man who buys and frees slaves. Islam is seen as a continuation of the other Abrahamic religions. Islam is meant to be the same as other Abrahamic religions, but more accurate and newer. It is said that Muhammad, in the year 620 AD, was taken by the Archangel Gabriel to the 7 layers of heaven, where he negotiated that his followers should pray 5 times a day. The worldview of Muslims can be defined as you must obey such a small request as to pray 5 times from God, the creator of everything that ever was and ever will be. Muslims believed themselves to be the most uncorrupted, as they have no tax compared to the other religions. As Muhammad preached and gained a following, the followers started to associate themselves more with their religion and not their tribe. This indirectly took power away from the leaders of Mecca. Meccan leaders also disapproved, because if there really is just one God, no one would come to Mecca to pray, trade, and appease the gods. This is what made the leaders rich after all. So the leaders tried to bribe Muhammad to stop preaching. When that didn't work, they became violent and began harassing and torturing his followers. The city of Medina asked Muhammad for help settling a dispute. The 12 clans of Medina needed his help as they were always in conflict. Muhammad wrote their constitution, establishing alliance. This helped boost Muhammad's reputation, resulting in many pagans and leaders of Medina to convert to Islam. Soon after, he was approached by God and is told to face Mecca instead of Israel while praying. Mecca still despised Muhammad and seized land from his followers and started violence. So Muhammad wrote a verse in the Quran permitting Muslims to pick up arms in the defense of their rights and faiths. These verses are said to be what provoke Muslim extremism, as they are interpreted in many different ways, some calling for death to non-believers. One of the most influential verses reads, "Fight in the way of Allah, those who fight you, but do not transgress. Indeed, Allah does not like transgressors. And kill them wherever you overtake them, and expel them from wherever they have expelled you. And persecution is worse than killing. And do not fight them at a holy site until they fight you there. But if they fight you, then kill them. Such is a recompense of the disbelievers. And if they cease, then indeed Allah is forgiving and merciful." This call to arms can and is interpreted in many different ways throughout the religion. This call to arms also began a war between Muslims and Mecca, where the Muslims were around 300 strong and the Meccan's army nearly 1,000 strong. Muhammad used many tactics to gain an advantage, including spying, allying, and raiding Meccan trade routes, and positioning his smaller army in strategic positions, like on top of a hill. This resulted in a quick and clear Muslim victory, with over 5 times more casualties on the Meccan side and just as many were captured. The new leader of Mecca sent an army of 3,000 to attack Medina. Muslims had an army of 700 to defend. The Muslims were defeated, but only lost 70 and successfully retreated back into their walls. Muhammad claimed it was punishment by God and a test of their steadfastness. Finally, the Meccans produced an army, 10,000 strong, to wipe out the Muslims once and for all and regain pride for Mecca. Muhammad was able to roust an army of 4,000 soldiers, 300 horsemen, and 1,500 camel riders. The Muslims decided to dig a deep trench around Medina's north side, as the other sides were protected by natural barriers such as mountains. The Meccan army showed up and waited for weeks on the other side of the trench, restricting resources. The soldiers of the Meccan army eventually left due to starvation. The Muslims were successful. Islam was considered a very progressive religion for the time, as it granted rights to slaves and women previously not held. After all the fighting, Muhammad proclaimed that all Muslims must take an all-important pilgrimage to Mecca in their life, making them no longer a threat to the Meccan economy, so they could travel freely. They signed a treaty, allowing all Muslims to travel peacefully. The Meccans broke the treaty, So Muhammad launched an army of 10,000 to take over Mecca. After the Muslim victory, the leader converted to Islam and relinquished the city to Muhammad. They broke all the idols in the Meccan temple and proclaimed there is only one God, Allah. As his life seemed to be coming to an end, he held a farewell sermon on top of a mountain, instructing his followers to have no racial superiority and to be peaceful when possible. He proclaimed he had now perfected his religion, then passed away in the months later. The Islam Empire would go on to take Byzantium and the last of the Roman empires and spread through Pakistan and out to India.